Welcome back to another United We Stand America, UWS America, and UWSAmerica.com for your education, enjoyment, and information networking. This is November 28th, 2022. We're going to be talking with Erin Ryan, who is one of Doug Klamath, who is congressman in Northern California, Republican congressman's support team. And Erin happens to have tremendous expertise on what is deemed to be the biggest demolition project, perhaps of all time in America, or at least the biggest demolition project of dams infrastructure in America ever, is what's being said is possibly going to take place here in Northern California. There are several dams that the Klamath River has in it right now. And this demolition project was proposed years ago. There have been many local people that I'm aware of who are fighting to keep the dams where they are for good reason. And so we're going to talk today about those dams and what actually is taking place. But as we share this information, let's remember too that the information that's coming out right now about what's really going on in America and in the world, it's like little pieces of a dam are breaking away as the information starts to come through, and more people wake up that something is off and that we, the people, must wake up and awaken. In fact, I'm wearing this shirt right now, Clay Clark's Reopen America Tour. It's now called the Reawaken America Tour. So we're here to reawaken, and let's say hello to Erin Ryan. Welcome to our UWS American meeting today. Erin, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a really important topic. It would be the largest dam removal in the history of the world, not to put too fine a point on it.
Okay. So let us know what your expertise is, how you know about this stuff, and what is your role right now?
I'm a senior district representative for Congressman Doug Klamath. I work primarily anymore Shasta and Siskiyou counties, and I've worked in Siskiyou County for the congressman for 10 years, 11, I guess almost 11 years, and 2 years in the state Senate. Prior to that, I helped the Tea Party groups up there in Siskiyou County get started, which is what started the conversation about dam removal. And when I went to work in the Klamath office, that just allowed me to actually be more helpful in a more official capacity.
Excellent. Well, we're here to talk today about what could be the biggest dam removal in the history of the world. So what is going on? Why are they talking about and actually have now approved at the highest level of American government that we're aware of to remove 4 dams, it looks like, coming from the Klamath Falls, Upper Klamath Lake, and then the Klamath River going down to the Pacific Ocean? What exactly is going on here, and why is this an important story?
It's an important story because this is one of those things, it's in dog training and raising children, explaining is losing. And in politics, explaining is losing 100% of the time. This requires knowledge. Sounds good to say we're going to take those dams out and we're going to return fish to the upper reaches of that river and it'll all be magical. Because truly it would have to be magical in order to accomplish their goals, which is more water and more fish. So you see the four rectangles on there, those are the dams. The top one up by Link River Dam up there is J.C. Boyle Dam. That was put in 1958. The next one is Copco 1. That was put in 1922. The next one is the Copco 2 Dam, also in California in 1925. And the very bottom one that's marked on that map is Iron Gate. Iron Gate was put in 1964. So these are not massive dams. They're not, the size of Grand Coulee or anything of that caliber. But what they do allow is water retention and control, because you can see where I-5, the red line down the middle, where Interstate 5 goes across, the Klamath River at one point flooded and washed out Interstate 5. So flooding is an issue. In the dam removal scenario, they claim flooding is definitely not why the dams were built. And they also claim the fish can get up there. If you look at Copco 1, the second blob there above Iron Gate, there used to be a 130-foot basalt reef back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth. And so fish historically didn't go up there. This river is called the Upside Down River. That's the distinction that the folks in that area get. The Upside Down River, it got its name because Upper Klamath Lake, it comes from volcanic soil. So it's very warm. Upper Klamath Lake, it wouldn't be odd for it to be like 85 degrees. Well, anyone who knows anything about coho salmon knows that they spawn 25 miles from the coast. And so having them go 257 miles up to an 85-degree lake is silly and nonsensical. Besides the fact they would never have done that historically. Iron Gate is about 180 miles from the coast, and you can tell that by looking at the river on the map. You'll also find it humorous, I guess, to find that now you're looking at a 257-mile river, 180-mile mark plus or minus hits Iron Gate Dam, but they claim that by taking those dams out, you're going to get 400 miles of river for fish. And see, I just don't know how anybody who got past 6th grade could figure that is possible. The other trick is there are people alive who were there before some of these dams were built. And their historical knowledge, as is that of the trapper journals, they used to call this the Stinky River because the water that comes from Upper Klamath Lake is warm and winds up cooler now with the dams down by the ocean. But back in the day, it was hot all the way down the river and it was green and icky and they wouldn't let their horses drink out of it. So they claim they want to restore the river, but they would technically be restoring it to a river that was inhospitable for fish. The phosphorus that, blue-green algae, you guys familiar with that? Like blue-green algae that's in kombucha and all this stuff, comes from the Klamath. So the environmentalists claim that the river is toxic because it has the blue-green algae in it. But oddly enough, you have to pay a lot of money for it if you buy it at a health food store and it's the same stuff. So there are a lot of things that don't make any sense in this. Let's see. So they'll tell you that you get more water and more fish. You're going to take out Iron Gate Dam, which has a hatchery that puts about 6 million fish into the river per year. So somehow by taking out the dams that created high water basically all year long, because you could do releases, and getting rid of the hatchery that makes 6 million fish, you're going to get more water and more fish. None of that actually makes any sense. So people start thinking, well, you're not actually telling me the truth because this makes no sense. Let me give you a couple of ideas on maybe why they would be doing this. I've penciled in the Scott and Shasta rivers. One runs kind of next to I-5 down there on the south side of the Klamath, and the other one is right under the letter R in California. The Scott and Shasta rivers, that's where the water will come from for the Klamath, because they're going to release 20 million cubic yards of sediment into the river. They're not going to take the dams out, physically come remove them and take out the sediment. The plan is to let all of that go down the river. Well, there isn't the volume of water to move that distance. You look at how long that river is, there's no way that volume will go down there. 20 million cubic yards, just for people who like visuals, is the equivalent of one dump truck being dumped in the river every minute of every day for 6 solid years. And from dam removals previous, we know that that is probably only a third of what would actually be rushing down the river. Not good.
Okay. So some plans here, they're planning on destroying these dams and not removing the actual concrete, but you're saying they're going to what, blow it up and allow the concrete to go down into the river, or what are you suggesting?
Yep. They claim that it'll wash out. But anyone who's ever worked with concrete knows that you don't stand in it. It's toxic. Um, so why, I mean, if you threw concrete in a river, you would go to jail. So I'm not sure how they think it's gonna make fish habitat on the banks or whatever. You're not allowed to do that, but supposedly they can. One of the big things is the short nose and the long nose suckers, the sucker fish that are supposedly imperiled and endangered, et cetera, et cetera. Well, interestingly enough, the largest population of suckerfish live behind these dams. So to give you some idea of how disingenuous this whole process is, rather than say, oh my gosh, if 80% of the population of suckers lives behind the dams and they're endangered, we better not get rid of the dams. Now, they just passed a bill in the California legislature that said it was okay to kill the suckers during the dam removal. So,
Okay.
not a problem.
So essentially, they're going to be, they've already agreed to destroy these dams, that they being the energy company. Who is involved in this? Who is talking about destroying these dams?
Okay, so Pacific Corp manages the hydroelectric on the dams, which is hydroelectric for about 70,000 homes. So why you would want to get rid of clean green energy in an age where we supposedly think that clean green energy is important, that makes no sense. Pacific Corp has been blocked from relicensing the dams. Part of the discussion that you'll see or hear or whatever in commentary online is that the dams are antiquated and unstable and unsafe, although they've passed all their safety regs, and a concrete dam takes about 100 years to cure. Well, the ages are 1922, 1958, 1925, and 1964. So they're just about hitting their prime, actually. So they're not antiquated. They did not build fish passage in. And so that's another one. There's no fish passage. We have to have that. And they just cheated by not doing it. Now, they specifically didn't build fish passage because if they moved the fish above the dams, the water was too warm, had too much phosphorus. And when the phosphorus from the volcanic soil that's in Upper Klamath Lake that makes the lake warm, when that phosphorus is in the river, it depletes the oxygen, so the fish can't live there. So they didn't move them above the dams because they couldn't live there. That's why they didn't build fish ladders. It was kind of sensible. Might be interesting to note too that a guy named Dr. Paul Hauser used to work for NASA and teaches at George Mason and a few other places. He was the scientific integrity officer that was brought out, I want to say 8 years ago, maybe, to look at all the research and look at all their alternatives. And he went back to the Secretary of the Interior and said, well, of all the possible things they could do to improve, quote, the health of the river, taking the dams out would be the absolute worst alternative. And they said, well, we don't put those findings in writing, because they were basically trying to make the science fit their hypothesis of dam removal is going to solve our problems. He put his findings in writing and promptly got fired. So it isn't about science. It isn't about fish. It is about destroying the project, the Klamath project that I won't go into, but it's very large, creates a tremendous amount of agriculture, happens up there, uses water from the Upper Klamath Lake. That's why Upper Klamath Lake was formed in the first place. They put
Okay, so
in a
with
little.
deconstruction, well, let's say that, I don't even know if deconstruction is the right word. It sounds like they're talking about demolishing them, like a
Yes,
building would be demolished, leaving the actual parts in the river itself, telling us that's
correct.
going to clean it. And you're saying that how many dump trucks would it take to remove that amount of concrete again?
No, not the concrete. I'm talking about the sediment behind the dams. I'm not even talking about the material of the dams. Just the
Okay.
sediment behind the dams is estimated at 20 million cubic yards. But that's a really hard number for people to understand, like in your head. Like, what is 20 million cubic yards? Looks like a lot to me. That's what I think, a lot. But in order to put that number in a visual, 20 million cubic yards of sediment going down the river, forget the material from the actual dams themselves. That equates to about one dump truck every minute of every day for 6 solid years. And in previous dam removals, the sediment behind the estimates of sediment behind the dams that were removed, and they were much smaller facilities up in Oregon and Washington, that turned out to be about a third of what the sedimentation really was. And how it, if you think about water going down a river, if you let it all rush down at one time, it's going to pull the banks with it. You know, water has features that we all know. It's kind of like pulling the plug out of the bathtub. There's a suction that takes place. So you're looking at upwards, maybe 40, 50, 60,000 cubic yards. So
in other words, it's an possible cleanup job to get, and it's not even planned to clean it up.
Nope.
And these dams right now serve several purposes. So one of the purposes you mentioned is 70,000 homes are powered 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Now, we all know that California has had power outages, as well as even the apparent governor of California, Governor Newsom, has requested people turn off their electric devices at certain times during the year when they thought power consumption was too high for the grid. So we're talking about, as far as I know, 2% of the California grid. Now, California being, if it was its own nation, the sixth biggest nation in the world, economically speaking. And yet, instead of adding more resources to the power, they're trying to take this 2% away of clean energy. And the excuse is that it's for the environment and that it's for fish, which it sounds like is a farce, because the fish don't even go that high. Normally the salmon don't even swim that high, and the lake is warm itself. Plus there was a basalt cliff there where the fish couldn't even get up historically before they built one of those dams. So it doesn't make any sense. Now, are you saying that when they take away this 2% of power for California, which, by the way, in the media it's being reported that instead of making up that 2%, they're going to request that Californians use less energy. And that is what they actually are saying. So they want to take away 2% of California's power, and then the 70,000 homes, and we make it up by using less energy. Now, it's going to cost a lot of money to destroy this infrastructure. But what is the other benefit currently of the dams? Is the Klamath Lake itself going to be affected if they destroy these dams, and what will the result be?
Yeah, you're looking at a multitude of things. Like, okay, so one thing to consider, Upper Klamath Lake was formed back at the turn of the century for agriculture. And that's a whole nother thing. You can Google the Klamath Project. That's what it was called. And it's billions of dollars of agriculture. The only thing making Upper Klamath Lake a 25-mile or 26-mile long lake, it's very shallow, are Keno and Link, the two little dams up there. They're tiny. They don't produce hydropower or do anything fancy. The one of the tribal hitmen, he's not part of the tribe, but he works for them, has said publicly that they want to take that out because the water that is stored in Upper Klamath Lake, so anything that's not naturally reserved, so without the dams, you would have no storage, and without storage, you have no Klamath Project. There goes all the agriculture. So the Klamath dams, the little brown ones, or kind of big brown ones, don't provide water for agriculture, but they do provide insurance for agriculture, because without them, taking out Keno and Link would be child's play. I mean, that's pretty simple. It also messes with agriculture in the Shasta River and the Scott River, because in order to get water, they're not going to be happy downriver when there's no water in the Klamath because you've created a giant clog. So they'll go after the Scott and Shasta. The Scott River is fully adjudicated, so the only water they can get is water they've stolen from people that own it. And I'm sure that'll be coming. It's important to note the Pacific Corp that owns the dams, those guys would have licensed them if they could, but they were not allowed to. So the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has said that they can transfer the license of the dams to the Klamath River Renewal Corporation, the KRRC, which is a shell corporation that was created to be like the the face of this dam removal thing. The problem is if this goes bad, which I mean, I would put money on the fact that it would, I don't think you get anybody to bet against it either. Once you've created a Superfund site up there, the KRRC disappears. They're a shell corp with no assets. This project has yet to be bonded. I've yet to see anything. They haven't even studied the impact of this. This tells you how disingenuous. They never studied the impact beyond the 5 miles of river below Iron Gate Dam. Over 170 miles of river. They never looked at what was going on in the ocean to affect salmon. They never looked at any of that. We just got to take the dams out and that'll give us more water and more fish, except that senior members of the tribe and people who are in their 80s and 90s, they've all said that that's stupid because they lived there before the dams. And in the summer, the river goes almost dry and they'll never have more water and more fish without them.
Okay. Yeah, so Pacific Corp, this is not 2% of California's supply, but it is 2% of Pacific Corp supply, to be clear. So 70,000 homes energy would be affected. Now, these are massive dams. They really are. Let me see if I can show some of the pictures of that. Let's see here. I'd like to anyway if I can. But the thing about these dams is that they're saying the main reason they want to remove them is what? They're saying it's because of the salmon. Is that right? Is that the real reason that they're claiming they want to remove these things?
Yeah, they want to open up the river because they're going to get 400 miles of fish passage beyond Iron Gate Dam. Historically, if you looked at a real map, not my play school map, that I gave you, but if you looked at a real map, there are some tributaries, Shovel Creek and a few other things that are below Iron Gate, and that's where the fish always went. If they made it up that far, they used to cut off right there. They didn't ever go way up. They didn't go up because of barriers, and they didn't go up there because the water was too warm. They've said that, oh no, they've found fish bones up there, but if you actually tell the truth, the fish bones that they find don't have heads. So they were traded. The Indians traded them. The Shasta tribe has always maintained that dam removal will destroy the area. The difficulty is that the Shasta tribe, although they are much, much larger than the Karuk or the Yurok or any of those guys, their Aboriginal territory covers the entirety of where these dams sit. They have no voice because they're not federally recognized. So, and their people are buried under the reservoirs, by the way. There are Indian burial grounds. Almost forgot that part. Indian burial grounds below the reservoirs, but it's okay if they get flushed down the river too, apparently, along with the coho salmon that are, or the suckerfish that are supposedly endangered. They sidestep a lot in this.
The worst case scenario then, what is the actual reason why they're looking at destroying these dams here? I mean, there's a lot of money going at $500 million minimum, which you've told me it could go way up from that. Just to take these things out, take the energy supply out, and put all that sediment, which sounds is so enormous, it's difficult to imagine, into the actual river itself. And the environmental effects, we don't know. But you did say there's billions of dollars in Klamath Project agriculture, which is food supply and production for America and American industry, in addition to the power effects. And so what is the worst case scenario in terms of why this dam project is being so fought for? And we know that there's some big business involved as well, besides just Pacific Corp. So what's going on here?
It's kind of anybody's guess, but anyone who has followed Klamath politics at all knows that every year it gets more and more difficult for the farmers up there to irrigate on the Klamath project. So that would be up by Keno and Link and up by Klamath Falls. And a lot of it's in Tule Lake. That's not on the map, but that's on the California side. So the Klamath project stretches into California and also up into Oregon. If you wanted to break that project and you wanted to get rid of all that farming and, return the land to, I don't know, some magical time before time, you would get rid of these 4 dams, and then you could get rid of Upper Klamath Lake and stop the irrigators. They've done a pretty good job of stopping the irrigators just by withholding the water allotments that they are legally allowed. But there's still a fight over it, and there's, you know, the politics still roll. If the dams are not there, that changes everything. And you have to remember, never underestimate the greed of think about all the restoration projects, right? We're doing they were doing Trinity River restoration. And in the Trinity River restoration, they came to my office, 2 biologists, to let me know that the population of fish they were supposed to be saving was being managed to extinction. And they kind of thought somebody should stop them. And when I asked him if the tribe was mad, because supposedly the tribe had advisors, you know, on their project there in Trinity, he said that the tribe members privately told them that they didn't care if the fish were wiped out because they would get paid for the rest of their lives. The federal government would have to pay them for the extinction of those fish. So I have no idea if that also goes for this project, but there's an overlap in tribes, so who knows?
Okay, well, essentially what we're dealing with here is that we have a potentially environmental disaster we're looking at, which doesn't take, like you said, a high degree of knowledge and understanding to sort of envision all the dump trucks it would take just to remove the sediment, understanding that power production is going to go down, understanding it's going to affect all the many homes that live near the Klamath River as well. I know many homes
Well, think
wells
about, and you know, Michael, another little piece of the puzzle, each of those reservoirs is available for fire. So when you have a fire in that area, the way that they get water to put it out, when Hornbrook was on fire, the Klamath on fire, they used the water behind Copco. So without that, there's no mitigation. There's a list as long as your arm of things that they haven't mitigated. But one thing to kind of remember is this is never done until it's done. And I've always been a believer that when it gets right down to it, they're going to have a terrible time with the liability on this, because right now, California and Oregon have like entered into some sort of like an agreement, but it can't be an official agreement because that's not constitutional. States can't make agreements with each other without the intervention of Congress to stamp it. They have not done that. So if in fact California and Oregon have said, we're going to shoulder the liability for this project, well, that means every single resident in California and Oregon is on the hook for a potential future Superfund site. And every taxpayer in the country is on the hook if it exceeds the resources of California and Oregon and hits the federal end. So I guess, although it seems like it's a relatively small group of people that would be affected, it's a relatively minor geographical point. Maybe you're never going to go there. You might want to think of, I mean, you know, just like listen to your wallet for just a second. It's probably crying because we're talking about it.
Well, thank you, Erin, for giving us an update on what's going on right now with the Klamath Dam. Like you said, it's not over. The dams are standing perfectly fine right now and doing their job. There has been some approvals, but there hasn't been a risk mitigation or insurance or bonds to cover it, which is going to enter into many, many billions of dollars. And at the same time, they are saying California and Oregon citizens will be on the hook for whatever environmental disaster is formed from this kind of thing. Another good reason why we see government overreach, and when corporations maybe get a little too connected to government as well, we're starting to run into some interesting challenges that don't make.
You know, the other little piece of it too that should be included. The people in Siskiyou County put an advisory measure on the ballot, and they opposed dam removal by 79%. So the people in Siskiyou County don't want it. So you're thinking, well, maybe the Oregon guys want it. No, they opposed it 73%. And those were 2 different ballot measures in 2 different counties, one Oregon, one California, in the places where this will take place. So this runs contrary to the representatives of those 2 areas, because both members of Congress are opposed. It runs contrary to all the citizens in both those areas. And so I don't know, that ought to be enough, but apparently it isn't.
Well, clearly, we, the people, and common sense are being avoided completely with this discussions between big and government. So what's going on here? We have to keep following this story. It's an important one, and we want to do our part. And so thank you for getting the word out. Your video wasn't working today. Maybe we'll get another time to talk more about this in the future. We have a short amount of time for a couple questions. Anybody here have a question they'd like to ask? Let's go to Michael Huffman. Would you like to ask a question, Erin?
Yeah, isn't it true that the cost of the removal is 2 billion, that's it with a B, $2 billion, and whatever that cost, where is that money coming from? If some of it is coming from the federal government, can't the House of Representatives put a stop to it? The new
The money that is earmarked currently is coming from the California Water Bond, which was Prop 1 way back. It's been, I don't know, a decade or better ago. They have like $250 million for the removal. Now, how silly is that? You look at these 4 big facilities, and anybody who has ever dealt with large equipment, moving large equipment, the roadways to get to these places won't handle that. The bridges, just the infrastructure itself, much of it will have to be replaced, upgraded, or it'll be destroyed and have to be replaced. $250 million, they're going to burn through that in a matter of minutes. My dad, who was an expert in surety and bond and did the bond on the Kingdom and the biosphere and stuff like that, when he looked at this project, he used to work for Travelers, and he said, if this was his project to write a bond on, he wouldn't go for anything less than $7 billion. Because he said with all the parameters of this, he expected it to fail. And when projects fail, the bond has to complete the project. So you have to have bonded it for the right amount. As far as I know, they haven't even gotten to the point of doing any of those things yet.
Sounds
But
like
if you listen
overall,
well, and
we
you
have
know
a
what,
second.
just for you guys, just for your, because you like to sleuth, read the articles that come out. Set yourself up a Google alert on Klamath dams. And when they send out articles, look at the language that they use, because the language is always, you can tell when they're losing. It's very interesting when they're either nobody cares about it or they're losing. And it's like, we're doing it this year. I mean, they just start making like wild claims. And it's like, oh, there must be something bad going on. They sound like they're desperate.
Well,
Follow
we
that.
talked a little bit about a online service called Q, and what they posted was a video called "We're Not Going to Take It." So we have to wonder, the people of Siskiyou County don't want to take it. The people of Oregon don't want to take it. The money is enormous. The consequences are enormous. And yet, apparently, it seems like a good idea to somebody in the government and these corporations. It doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Well, are the people going to take it? That is the question. Jewel, did you have a question or comment for Erin?
Yes, Erin, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing about this. It's really important of all the things you're involved with. 2 questions, and I don't know if you can answer, like, why are they doing this? What do you think? Why are they doing this? It's insane. Obviously to destroy us, but why are they doing this? And what can we do now that we've got some good people in Congress like Doug, and we've taken over Congress, hopefully? Is there something we can do apart from vote and then get it stolen from us? Of course. Is there something we can do? How can we be digital soldiers? How can we support Doug and you at the office? How can we let people know that this is disastrous for our local area, local action, national impact?
At this particular point, we're kind of sitting on a bubble at the moment, and it remains to be seen how this goes. This hasn't been done through congressional action. So it wasn't that we were outvoted or any of those things. It was never done through congressional action. This has all been done through the bureaucracy. So the Secretary of the Interior, though, they're the ones who have been kind of pressing this for all this time. Pacific Corp was left with no choices because the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that licenses dams, those licenses are usually like 50 years. They refuse to relicense. So without taking out the dams or giving them to someone else or something, they were sort of stuck. They didn't have a lot of options, and they told us a long time ago. They said we'd relicense the dams and continue to operate them if we could. But bottom line is they have a gun to their head, so they're not getting any sweet deal. Their dams are being destroyed and they're being left with no options. As far as the next phase of it, watch. It could be horrible. The horrible option, two horrible options actually, would be that the Secretary of the Interior signs the order that came out from FERC. They've sidestepped a lot of things. The ability for the county to sue, the ability for intervention on a lot of things was skipped. They jumped right to the determination with FERC. And that violates tons of federal processes. And those processes are where we intervene. The other little, I don't know, the other really bad one that could happen would be if Joe Biden signed it. If he signed it, the dams come out and there's zero anybody can do about it after that. That's what they did with the Northwest Forest Plan. That's how we got the whole spotted owl thing and why we're on fire every year. Was the Northwest Forest Plan. And that was a president signed something that was done improperly, and that was Clinton.
Does it seem like they're misusing the environmental movement and people's passion for a better environment and really selling them a bill of goods that actually has the opposite effect?
Yes.
And then obviously just really using people's emotions and care about the environment against them in such a way that they actually contribute to their own destruction of their own environment rather than the benefit of it. Is that right?
Yes. And the people that you will find, if you, like I said, if once you start following this online, you'll see a theme. The people that are in favor of it don't live there. The people who are in favor of it have never been there. The people who are in favor of it don't know anything about the area. They have no idea about the history. They don't know that it's really, the Klamath River Renewal Corporation was doing like cookies and punch meetings around Siskiyou County for a while. They thought they were going to win everybody over, which didn't really work out for them. They just bought a lot of cookies. They had pictures posted of what the river will look like after the dams come out, which was actually just downright funny because there are people alive who were there before the dams were there. And those people are standing there pointing at the pictures going, it never looked like that. It never looked like that. So if you restore it, how's it going to look like that? So they just take pictures of other rivers that look really beautiful and they go, yep, that's what we're going to get because the river is toxic now. The Klamath River, it's just horrible, which is a total lie.
So how did they pass this if it was not voted in on the ballots?
Because the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission was handed a request to transfer the license. The licensing of the dams belongs to Pacific Corp at the time, right now. And it was requested that they transfer those licenses to the Klamath River Renewal Corp. The first time that came up, the FERC wouldn't do it because it was for purposes of decommissioning, with quotes around that. So for the purposes of decommissioning, they were supposed to transfer the license. Well, you can't transfer the license for something that hasn't been decided to a group of people who can't run the dams. Like, they can't indemnify the running of the dams. They don't know how to run them. They're lawyers out of New York. What do they know? So it didn't fly the first time, but they sent it back to FERC. And I think because they see the house flipping and some things changing, they decided to pull the trigger on it anyway. They haven't finished the NEPA review. They haven't finished any of those things. The processes where giant projects like this happen have not been followed.
Well, it sounds downright criminal to someone like me who just is kind of a rookie in this subject. And I don't personally know of anyone or a corporation or any representative who would want their name attached to such unwanted destruction. And clearly it seems like a bunch of lies and trash. The people of Siskiyou County seem to see through it. The people of Oregon seem to see through it. But somebody still thinks they can get away with it. Who are they? And do they really want their names attached to this? Because it doesn't look like it's going to end well for anyone who's trying to push this unwanted destruction, unless they can really prove to us that the salmon are going to want to use this thing way more, and that's more valuable than all the benefits it's currently providing to California and Oregon and their citizens who need these agriculture projects, need this power, and frankly, the environment will be tremendously affected. I know for a fact, because I've seen some presentations, that the birds, the owls, and many wildlife will be negatively affected by this. Now, when we get into the sediment question, possibly absolutely destroying this river itself. So what a unwanted destruction is a good word for it. I'm not happy. I'm not happy that someone thinks it's a good idea, but I'm happy we shared this information today. I thank you for your time today, Erin. We're hoping that Doug LaMalfa really keeps the step up. We know Donald Trump has given him his unconditional support, and we'd like to see him keep stepping up. We know there are other water issues in Siskiyou County, including Shasta Lake, or that's actually in Shasta County, I believe, but that one, absolutely, we want to see more water there. And we want to see the water situation in California improving and not getting worse, as well as the power situation. So thanks for your time today. Where can we find more information of what you do, Erin, and let us know a little more about your radio program?
You can find actually my contact information's all on there, not for work, but my own and cell phone and email and stuff. It's at wethepeopleradio.us.
Okay, wethepeopleradio.us. You do a weekly radio show, is that right? Have you been doing that for a while?
Correct. Like 2 hours on Sunday. We've done it for the last 12 years or so.
12 years. Okay, We the People Radio. Thank you, Erin, for being one of We the People and for caring about your nation and about your local community and local action, national impact. Thanks for talking with us today. We want to keep having you back as a special guest here and there, and also perhaps you'll participate as we have other wonderful special guests coming up on United We Stand America. Want to send a special shout out to those who are supporting this movement. We're getting some videos edited right now. You know who you are. We're very grateful. And we're about to get a lot of great material out there. So thanks everybody for your co-creation with America and freedom and justice and with God, because you know why? One nation under God, and in God's will we trust. And this is our motto and our guide. So we're going to close out the live participation here. We'll be back next week on Monday nights, and we'd love to see some of you listening to this on the internet also join us then. And thanks everybody. Okay.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.